Tom had always lived a quiet life. He enjoyed the simple things, his small apartment, a cup of coffee in the morning, and the comfort of routine. He didn't expect anything out of the ordinary. But that night was different. It was just after midnight, and Tom was relaxing on the couch, watching TV. The house was quiet, save for the soft hum of the fridge in the kitchen. He stretched his legs and yawned, getting ready to head to bed. But then, a sound caught his attention. A faint noise, like a soft thud, came from the kitchen. Tom froze. He sat up straight, his senses sharpening. Was it an intruder? A burglar? The noise came again, a soft scrape this time. His heart began to race as he slowly stood up and tiptoed toward the kitchen. He tried to be as quiet as possible, but his shoes made a soft tapping sound on the floor. He couldn't help it. The adrenaline was kicking in. He reached the doorway to the kitchen and peered inside. There, in the dim light, stood a woman. Tom blinked, unsure if his eyes were playing tricks on him. The woman was unlike anyone he had ever seen. She wasn't from his world, that was clear. Her skin shimmered, almost glowing faintly under the kitchen light, and her hair moved as though it had a life of its own. She looked up at him, her eyes glowing in the dark. Tom's breath caught in his throat. "Who are you?" he managed to ask, his voice shaky. The woman didn't respond immediately. Instead, she walked toward him slowly, her movements graceful, almost unnatural. There was a strange confidence in her posture, as though she didn't fear anything. Not him, not the world. Tom instinctively took a step back. His mind raced. Was this a dream? A hallucination? The woman tilted her head, studying him. "I'm here," she said softly. Her voice was melodic, soothing even, but there was something unsettling about it. "I need you." Tom's heart hammered in his chest. What did she mean? Need him for what? Before he could speak again, she moved closer, and he stepped back. "No," he said firmly, his hands raised as if to ward her off. "Stay away from me. What do you want?" She didn't listen. In a fluid motion, she reached out and touched his arm, her fingers cold as ice. Tom shivered from the contact. The coldness wasn't natural. "I will explain soon," she said, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that sent a chill down his spine. Tom's mind was racing. What was going on? How did she get inside his house? And why was she so calm? He was terrified, but at the same time, he felt something else. A strange pull, like he couldn't move away from her, even though every instinct screamed for him to run. The woman finally stepped back, sensing his unease. "I'm not here to harm you," she said, "but I cannot leave." Tom didn't understand. He wanted to demand answers, but the words caught in his throat. Something about her was too powerful, too strange. "You can't leave?" Tom repeated, his voice barely above a whisper. "No," she replied softly. "I need you." Tom's mind raced with questions. Who was she? Where did she come from, and why couldn't she leave? "I will explain soon," she said again, her voice gentle, but firm. She walked over to the counter and began to move things around. Her movements were fluid, almost too perfect. She started gathering ingredients as though she had done it 1,000 times before. Confusion clouded Tom's thoughts. Was this some sort of dream? Some weird, late-night fantasy? But the coldness of her touch was real. The strange presence she gave off was real. He opened his mouth to ask again, but no words came out. He just watched as she moved around his kitchen, preparing something he couldn't quite understand. There was a sense of finality in the air, as though whatever was happening was inevitable. The woman glanced back at him, her eyes glowing softly in the dim light. "I'll take care of everything," she said, her voice gentle but authoritative. Tom stood there, speechless. He didn't know what to do, what to think, or how to feel. But one thing was certain, his life was no longer his own. And as the woman continued to work in his kitchen, Tom realized that whatever had just started was beyond his control, and he couldn't stop it. Asterisk the next morning, Tom woke up to an odd silence. The usual hum of the city outside his window was muffled, almost as if the world itself had paused. He sat up in bed, rubbing his eyes, trying to piece together the events of the previous night. Had it all been a dream? The woman in his kitchen was she real? He glanced around his room, half expecting to see her standing in the corner, watching him again. But there was nothing. With a sigh of relief, he got out of bed and walked toward the kitchen. To his shock, she was there. The alien woman stood at the counter, chopping vegetables with a speed and precision that seemed almost supernatural. Her movements were fluid, graceful, like she had done this 1,000 times before. Tom froze in the doorway, unsure if he should say something or just turn and walk away. "Good morning," she said, her voice calm and warm, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. She didn't even look at him as she spoke, focused on her task. Tom stared at her for a moment, unsure of how to respond. He had barely spoken a word to her since she appeared in his home, and now she was acting as though everything was perfectly normal. "Are you cooking?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, as if he were still unsure of the reality of the situation. She nodded without looking up. "Yes, you'll need nourishment." Her words were simple, but the way she said them made Tom uneasy. He tried to understand why she was so at ease, so calm. Why was she doing this? Why was she even here? "Look," he started, his voice more assertive now. "I don't know who you are or where you came from, but I can't just—" She turned to him then, her eyes glowing softly, almost in reassurance. "You don't need to worry. I'm here because I've been sent to you. This is my purpose." Tom frowned. "Sent to me? By who? And why me?" The woman finally set down the knife and turned toward him fully. Her gaze was intense, but not in a threatening way. There was something strangely comforting about it, something that made Tom feel like he didn't have a choice but to listen. "I'm not here by accident," she explained, her voice soft and steady. "I've come to fulfill a role, a duty, if you will. I'll stay with you, cook for you, and bear your children." Tom's heart skipped a beat. "What?" The woman's expression was unreadable. "It's not as strange as it seems. On my planet, it is customary for the bond to be formed between those who are meant to share their lives." Tom backed away slightly, his mind scrambling to process her words. The shock and confusion were overwhelming. "You want to stay here with me, in my apartment, and you expect me to have kids with you?" She nodded calmly. "Yes, but not in the way you may think. This is part of my mission, part of our connection. We will both benefit from it, you'll see." The more she spoke, the more disoriented Tom felt. Her words were too strange, too alien. How could he just accept this? She was telling him things he couldn't even begin to understand, things that sounded impossible, and yet her presence was undeniable. "So what am I supposed to do now?" he asked, the frustration clear in his voice. "Just let you stay here? Live with me?" The woman stepped closer to him, her eyes still glowing softly. "You don't have to make any decisions right away. I'll be here for as long as I'm needed. All I ask is that you allow me to fulfill my role." Tom stared at her, speechless. The air in the room was thick with an uncomfortable tension. He didn't know what to do. But one thing was clear, his life was no longer his own. As she turned back to the counter, continuing her cooking as though everything was perfectly normal, Tom realized something he hadn't expected. He wasn't just a bystander in this strange situation. He was part of it now, and there was no going back. Days passed, but Tom still couldn't get used to the alien woman's presence in his home. At first, he thought it might be a dream, something his mind had created to cope with the chaos of his life. But the reality was undeniable that she was always there. Always. She would cook, clean, move through his home with ease, as if it was her own. And each time Tom tried to question her, she would simply smile, her eyes glowing with an unsettling calmness. It wasn't long before she began to make strange demands. It started small. She asked him to sit with her while she prepared meals. "I need to know how you eat," she explained one morning, her voice soft, almost curious. Tom reluctantly agreed, though he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being studied more than simply being asked to join her. But soon, her requests became bolder. One evening, after dinner, she asked, "Tom, I need to know more about your life. Tell me your deepest desires." Tom blinked, caught off guard by the question. "My desires?" He frowned, unsure how to answer. "Yes," she said, her voice never wavering. "Your hopes, your dreams, the things that move you. I need to understand you, all of you." I don't know," Tom stammered, taken aback. "Why is this important to you?" She stared at him, her glowing eyes unblinking. "It's important for the bond. It's important for what I need from you." Tom's stomach tightened. The word bond echoed in his mind. He still didn't understand it. She had mentioned it before, but each time it only made him more confused. What did she mean? What did she want from him? The next day, she caught him off guard again. As he returned home from work, she was standing at the door, holding a strange device in her hand. It looked like some kind of scanner with a soft blue glow emanating from the edges. "What's that?" Tom asked, his voice uneasy. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she pressed it against his arm, and Tom felt a cold chill run through him. It wasn't painful, but it was certainly uncomfortable. "I need to scan you," she explained, her tone almost apologetic. "I have to know everything about you, physically, emotionally." Tom jerked his arm back. "What are you doing?" "I told you," she said calmly. "This is part of our connection. It's a necessary step." Tom took a step back, his heart pounding. "I don't think I'm okay with this. Why are you doing this to me? What is this?" She stepped closer, her eyes softening as she reached out, but Tom pulled away. She stopped, her face unreadable. And for a brief moment, Tom thought he saw a flicker of frustration in her eyes. "I'm not hurting you," she said, her voice low, almost pleading. "I need to know you, Tom. I need to understand you." He shook his head, his mind racing. "I don't understand any of this. I didn't ask for any of this." Her expression softened, and she took a step back. "I know this is difficult. I know you're scared, but I'm here for a reason. And whether you like it or not, we're connected now. The bond is already starting to form." Tom couldn't bring himself to say anything. He was too overwhelmed, too confused. Everything felt so out of place. Days passed, and her demands grew stranger still. She asked him to take walks with her, to explore the neighborhood, to talk for hours about human history and culture. She insisted that they spend time together, despite the fact that she was not from this world. Tom reluctantly complied, unsure of how to stop it, or even if he could. But it was the next request that truly shook him. "I need to know what you're willing to give," she said one evening as she set down a cup of tea in front of him. "I need to know if you're ready for what comes next." Tom raised an eyebrow. "What comes next?" Her eyes narrowed, a strange intensity behind them. "The bond, Tom. I need you to be ready for it. For what will happen between us." Tom didn't know how to respond. The idea of forming any kind of connection with this woman felt wrong on so many levels, but somehow he was beginning to feel a strange pull, a connection that seemed to grow stronger with each passing day. Was this her doing? Or was it his own feelings? He couldn't tell anymore, but one thing was certain: he was no longer in control of the situation. The alien woman had come into his life, and now it seemed like there was no way out. Tom spent the next few days in a haze of confusion, not knowing what was real and what wasn't. He still couldn't understand how or why this alien woman had entered his life, but there was no denying the strange connection that was forming between them. At first he resisted it. He pushed her away, tried to maintain his distance, but it was like trying to ignore a force of nature. Every time she looked at him, every time she spoke to him, something inside him stirred. He couldn't deny it, it was an attraction, but not like anything he had ever felt before. It wasn't just physical. There was something deeper, something almost magnetic. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, she casually reached over and placed her hand on his. The touch was light, but it sent an electric jolt through Tom's body. He looked up, meeting her gaze, and for a brief moment, the world outside seemed to disappear. Her eyes were intense, glowing with a soft, otherworldly light. There was no fear in them, no hesitation, only certainty. She was waiting for him to react, to acknowledge the unspoken bond between them. Tom pulled his hand away quickly, his heart racing. "What is this?" he whispered. His voice trembled as he spoke. "Why are you doing this to me?" "I'm not doing anything to you," she replied softly, her voice calm, almost soothing. "I'm here because we're meant to be. The connection is already forming, whether you want it or not." Tom shook his head, trying to process the words. The idea of being tied to her, of being bound by something he couldn't control, filled him with fear. He tried to fight it, to push back against the pull he felt every time she was near. But the truth was, it was harder than he thought. Over the next few days, the attraction grew stronger. The air between them thickened with an intensity that made Tom uncomfortable. She would stand too close, speak too softly, and he would find himself drawn to her in ways he couldn't explain. His body betrayed him, his thoughts consumed by her presence, her touch, her voice. It wasn't just physical, like the fleeting attraction he might have felt for a human woman. This was something else, something deeper. A primal, emotional pull that he couldn't fight, no matter how much he wanted to. One night, after dinner, she led him to the balcony. The moonlight bathed them both in a soft glow as she turned to him, her eyes shining in the darkness. "I've been waiting for this moment," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "For us to be this close." Tom's chest tightened. "Why? Why me?" She reached up and gently touched his cheek, her fingers cool against his skin. "Because I'm not just any alien. I was chosen for you. And you, whether you realize it or not, were chosen for me." Tom took a step back, his mind reeling. Chosen? For what? What kind of twisted fate was this? "I don't understand," he said, his voice shaky. This isn't normal. I don't even know you." She smiled, but it was a sad smile, one filled with an understanding he couldn't quite grasp. "You will, in time. All of this will make sense soon." The silence between them grew heavy. Tom's heart pounded in his chest. He wanted to run, to leave her and everything that had started to feel so overwhelming. But the more he tried to distance himself, the stronger the pull became. "You can't run from it, Tom," she said, her voice low but firm. "The bond is already forming. The connection is already there. We are bound, whether you like it or not." The way she said it, with such certainty, made something inside Tom snap. He felt a cold shiver run down his spine, but at the same time, he felt something else. A heat, a desire, an urge to surrender. "Stop," he said, his voice barely audible. "Please, I can't handle this. I need to understand what's happening." She stepped forward, her eyes never leaving his. "You're already understanding it, Tom. You're already part of this. Part of me." It was then that Tom realized something terrifying. The more he resisted, the more it consumed him. The attraction wasn't just physical, it was emotional, spiritual even. He had never known anything like it. And that scared him more than anything else. He had no idea where this was leading, but he knew one thing for sure. This wasn't something he could escape. It wasn't just a bond, it was a fate. and he was already tangled in it. Tom's world seemed to grow smaller with each passing day. The more he tried to make sense of the alien woman's presence in his life, the less he understood. Every question he asked only led to more confusion, and every attempt to push her away only drew him closer to her. The connection between them had grown undeniable, like an invisible thread pulling him into the unknown. One night, Tom sat in his living room, staring at the flickering light of the television, but his mind was far from the screen. The woman, who had never given him her real name, sat across from him, quietly watching him with those glowing eyes. He could feel the weight of her gaze on him, as though she were seeing straight through him. "What is it you really want from me?" Tom asked suddenly, his voice tight with frustration. The woman didn't answer right away. She simply sat there, her expression unreadable. Then, after a long pause, she finally spoke. "I've already told you, Tom," she said softly. "I'm here to fulfill my purpose." Our purpose. Tom clenched his fists. What does that even mean? What are you really here for? Why me? The woman's eyes softened, and for the first time, Tom saw a flicker of something like vulnerability in them. "Because you were chosen. This isn't just about me. It's about both of us. And the future." Tom's confusion deepened. "The future?" She nodded, her gaze never leaving his. "The future of my species, my people. You are part of something much bigger than yourself. You don't understand yet, but you will." A strange feeling washed over Tom as she spoke. It wasn't fear, but something far more unsettling, like an ancient truth that he wasn't ready to hear. His heart raced as he leaned forward, his mind grasping at the pieces of the puzzle she was slowly laying out for him. "What are you talking about?" he demanded, his voice trembling with a mix of dread and curiosity. "What's your mission?" The woman's face hardened, and she took a deep breath. "I was sent here to find you, Tom, to form the connection between us. But it's not just about me or you. It's about survival." Tom's brow furrowed. "Survival? Of what?" "Of my people. Of my planet." She paused, her eyes clouding over with a memory that seemed to haunt her. "I come from a dying world, Tom, a world on the brink of collapse. We've lost everything, our resources, our hope, even our ability to reproduce. But there's one thing we can still do." Tom's pulse quickened. He couldn't stop himself from asking, "What can you still do?" "Reproduce with you." Her words hung in the air, heavy and impossible. Tom opened his mouth to protest, but no sound came out. The idea was so far beyond anything he could imagine that it left him speechless. "You think I want this?" he whispered, his mind reeling. "You think I want to, don't you see?" She cut him off gently, her voice soft but resolute. "This is not about desire. This is about survival. My people have no future without this, without the bond we're creating." Tom took a step back, shaking his head in disbelief. "You've got to be kidding me." She stood up slowly, crossing the room to him, her movements graceful but purposeful. "This is bigger than you or me, Tom. We're both part of something that could change everything. I don't expect you to understand now, but soon you will. Soon you will see that the connection between us is more than just a bond. It's the key to saving both of our worlds." Tom felt his knees weaken as he tried to absorb the weight of her words. She was telling him that their connection, this thing, wasn't just about them. It wasn't just about a strange woman in his home who had appeared out of nowhere and seemed to want everything from him. It was about survival. The survival of a species. And somehow, Tom had become a part of that survival. The woman's voice softened. "I don't want to ask you for more than you're ready to give. But I need you to understand that this bond, this connection, it's not something we can escape. It's already begun." Tom stared at her, his mind still spinning. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. He was just an ordinary man, a human. How could he possibly have any role in saving an entire alien species? And yet, There she stood, claiming that he was the key to her survival. "Why me?" Tom finally managed to say, his voice barely audible. "Why not someone else?" She reached out, her hand brushing gently against his arm. "Because you are the one. There's something inside you, Tom, something that makes you unique, and it's through you that we can rebuild." Tom felt a chill run through him, a shiver that had nothing to do with the temperature in the room. His chest tightened as he realized the full extent of what she was asking. This wasn't just about him being her partner. It was about a mission, a desperate last hope for an entire civilization. "You don't have to say yes right away," she whispered, her voice calm. "But understand this, your choice will shape the future of both our worlds." Tom stood there, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. What was he supposed to do with this information? What was he supposed to feel? He looked at her, the alien woman who had taken over his life, and for the first time he realized the truth. He was in this, whether he liked it or not, and there was no turning back. Asterisk. The days blurred together, each one feeling like a weight on Tom's shoulders. The woman's presence in his life was no longer just an inconvenience, it was a constant, looming reminder of the impossible situation he was in. The bond between them had grown deeper, stronger, and there were moments when Tom felt like he had no control over his own body or mind. He could feel her watching him, even when she wasn't near, and the strange pull toward her only seemed to intensify with each passing hour. Tom was trapped, caught in a web he didn't understand, and for the first time in his life, he felt utterly powerless. He paced his apartment late one night, wrestling with the decision that had been weighing on him. The alien woman had been clear. This wasn't just about a relationship. It wasn't even about what he wanted. It was about survival, the survival of her species, the survival of her planet. And somehow his survival had become entwined with theirs. "You're part of this now," she had told him, her voice calm and unyielding, almost soothing in its certainty. "The connection is inevitable. Your choice is not whether or not to participate. It's whether or not you accept your role." His heart thudded in his chest as he walked back and forth across the room, the walls closing in on him. He could still feel the weight of her touch from when she had scanned him, still hear the quiet, almost hypnotic sound of her voice. Suddenly, there was a soft knock at the door. Tom froze. It was her. She didn't wait for him to answer. The door opened slowly, and she stepped into the room, her eyes glowing with an intensity that was becoming all too familiar. There was no hesitation in her movements, no uncertainty in the way she approached him. She was there to complete the task she had come to do. "I know what you're thinking," she said quietly, her voice low but clear, "and I understand your fear, but you must understand that this is not a decision you can make lightly. The fate of both our worlds depends on it." Tom turned to face her, his chest tightening with frustration. "But what if I don't want any part of it? What if I don't want to be the key to saving your species? What if I just want to go back to my life?" She didn't flinch, didn't even blink. "You can't go back, Tom. It's too late for that. The bond is already in place. The connection has been made." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You can fight it, you can resist, but it will only make things harder for you. You can't escape this." The words cut through him like a knife. He had tried to escape, tried to keep his distance, tried to ignore the growing attraction, the sense of destiny that seemed to cling to him no matter where he went. But she was right. There was no escape. Tom sank down onto the couch, his head in his hands. "Then what do I do?" he muttered, more to himself than to her. "What do I do when I don't even understand what's happening to me?" The woman sat beside him, her presence both calming and overwhelming. "You accept it. You accept the bond. You accept your role. And in doing so, you will give both of us the chance to survive. This is not just about me, Tom. It's about both of us." Our worlds are dying. Together we can save them. Tom looked up at her, his heart racing. She was offering him a choice, but it felt like a lie. There was no real choice. Not anymore. Not after everything that had happened. Why me? He whispered. Why did it have to be me? She turned to face him, her eyes searching his with an intensity that made him shiver. Because you are the key. There is something inside you, something about you, that made you the one. You may not understand it now, but you will. We are linked, Tom. We are bound by fate. The weight of her words hung heavy in the air. He had no answers, no way of knowing whether this was the right thing to do. But there was one thing he did know. He couldn't keep running. He couldn't keep pretending like he could go back to the life he had before. There was no undoing what had already been set in motion. Tom took a deep breath and met her gaze. What happens if I say yes? Her eyes softened, and for the first time, there was a hint of something close to warmth in her expression. If you say yes, we will form the bond. You will help me, help us rebuild. You will be part of something greater than you can imagine. And if I say no? He asked, his voice hoarse. She paused, her face unreadable. You don't have that option, Tom. You never did. Tom stood up, pacing again, his mind whirling. He could feel the walls closing in, the decision pressing down on him like a weight he couldn't escape. The future of two worlds was now in his hands, but he didn't know if he had the strength to make the right choice. Her presence was like a storm inside him, pulling at his thoughts, his desires, his every instinct. But it was also a reminder of something else, something deeper than the physical attraction, something he couldn't ignore. The choice had already been made for him, and now he had to accept it. Tom stood in the middle of his apartment, staring at the woman who had, in a matter of days, turned his entire world upside down. The weight of the decision he had made pressed heavily on his chest. It wasn't just the bond he had agreed to, but the realization that his life, the life he had once known, was gone forever. He had chosen to accept the bond, to surrender to what had already been set in motion. There was no going back. The moment he had made that choice, everything changed. Her presence, once just a strange disturbance in his life, now felt like an undeniable force. Her touch, her voice, her very being, it was as if they were woven together, their fates entwined in ways he couldn't fully understand. But now, as he stood there, he couldn't shake the feeling that the bond was growing stronger, more intense, and it was changing him in ways he never anticipated. The alien woman stood across the room, watching him with an expression that was almost unreadable. Are you ready, Tom? She asked, her voice calm but tinged with an emotion that he couldn't place. He didn't know if he was ready. How could he be? The whole concept still felt so alien to him, so wrong. And yet, despite everything, there was a part of him that couldn't deny the truth in her words. The bond had already begun. There was no turning back. What happens now? He asked, his voice hoarse with uncertainty. She stepped forward, her movements fluid and graceful, like she had all the time in the world. Now, we begin the next phase. The connection between us will deepen. We will share not only our lives, but our very essence. Tom's stomach churned. Share our essence? He repeated, his voice barely a whisper. Yes, she said. Softly, but there was no hesitation in her voice. The bond will allow us to exchange energy, thoughts, emotions. We will become intertwined in ways that are beyond your comprehension right now. But in time, you will understand. Tom's heart raced. He had thought he understood what was happening. He had believed that agreeing to the bond was the end of the story. But now, it seemed like this was just the beginning. The woman stepped closer to him, her eyes glowing with that familiar intensity. You've made your choice, Tom. Now it's time for you to feel the full extent of it. The connection will complete itself, and once it does, we will be one. One. Tom swallowed hard, his throat dry. It was the word that echoed in his mind. Now more than anything else. He had never imagined anything like this. He had never imagined being bound to someone, to an alien, in such a profound way. But now, standing there with her, he couldn't deny the truth of it. The bond was real, and it was already changing him. "You're not just a man, Tom," she said, her voice soft, almost tender. "You're the key. You always were." Her. Words seemed to hang in the air, but Tom couldn't focus on them. His mind was too overwhelmed with what was happening to him, to them, to everything. The pull toward her, the strange connection, was like a magnetic force he couldn't escape. His body felt alive in ways it never had before. His senses were heightened. Every touch, every glance, seemed to set something off inside him. "Is this what you wanted?" he asked, his voice strained. "To tie me to you like this?" "No," she answered, her eyes searching his. "This wasn't just about what I wanted. This was about necessity. Without this, neither of us would survive." Tom shook his head, trying to process everything. The weight of the decision was crushing him. But somewhere deep inside, beneath the fear and confusion, something else was rising, a strange acceptance. He couldn't escape it. He couldn't run from what had already begun. With a heavy sigh, Tom looked at the alien woman, his bondmate, and for the first time he saw the truth of what they were. Not two beings caught in some strange circumstance, but two parts of a greater whole, united by fate, by the very force of the universe itself. The connection had completed itself. And in that moment, Tom realized that there was no longer any question of whether or not he had made the right choice. The consequences had already taken root. He wasn't just a man anymore. He was part of something far greater, something he couldn't fully understand, but something that had already shaped him in ways he couldn't reverse. Her voice was soft as she spoke again, breaking the silence that had fallen between them. "The bond is complete, Tom. We are one. And now we will change everything." Tom felt the shift, the change deep inside him. He wasn't sure if he was ready for what came next, but in that moment, he realized that readiness didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that he had made his choice. And now he would have to live with the consequences of it, for better or for worse.